genocide of blacks in Dimona here in Israel?
למה החלטת לעזור את השחורים פה בדימונה? The problem was not the decision. The problem was that he was the mayor by election. And today we have direct elections. And he felt that the responsibility of the city of Dimona and what happens in Dimona and rested on his shoulders. Because citizens, they didn't just choose his party, but they chose him personally. And he knows that many people in his party, the opposite party, chose Begin, and that he was from the opposing party in Dimona as the mayor.
Why was the Knesset concerned with the African Hebrew Israelites living in Dimona?
One of the biggest problems was between what happened, what they were called at the time as the Black Hebrews, that the first arrivees received status as new immigrants. At that time it was the Minister of Interior, Shapir, who was from the Labour Party.
But to be a black Palestinian, I'm quite convinced it will be there, because as a black Palestinian, I am
live in Israel with deep roots to the land, whose ancestors date back for centuries. I met with Ali Jada, tour guide, and the informal African Palestinians in Old Jerusalem. I asked him about his life and relations between the Afro-Arabs and the Jews.
Well, life for him, I think it's the hell. I'm one of those people who had experienced that. To be Palestinian, that's a big problem. But to be a black Palestinian, I'm quite convinced it will be there, because as a black Palestinian, I am double oppressed by the Israelis.
In what way?
In what way? I will explain. First of all, they oppress me as a Palestinian. Secondly, they oppress me because of my color. Whenever I go around in the Israeli side, they call me Kushi. Kushi means nigger. Kushi means nigger.
So, in Israel, the land of God, people who are the brothers of the Arabs, two brothers, you are called nigger, I'm called nigger in America.
On the surface, this is what they say, that this is the land of God and we are cousins and there should be totally. But once you come to the practice, when you come on ground, you will find that there is a lot of discrimination and there is a real divorce between what they say and what they exercise.
Blacks and whites who were saying, so why stay? Why stay? You were called nigger every day. Why stay when you were denied your rights?
On the contrary, the more they humiliate me, the more they oppress me, the more I stick to my land, because this is my land. I'm so rooted. We are deeply rooted as Africans, as Palestinian Africans in this land. And we know pretty well that ancestors, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years, we had been here in this country, but they were spread away, taken to Africa. United States. So
books, in academic texts, and I read white people did not exist before 1681. Again, white people did not exist on planet Earth until 1681. Number two, any claim that this group called white people, any claim that that group is rooted in biology or derived from genes or biology or is innate, the approval of a man. So all men who were free of indenture or enslavement faced the same opportunities in these colonies as a matter of law. For example, free men of African descent could own servants or slaves, and they did. Vote, and they did. They could marry persons of the opposite sex. God, and I love that I have to make that qualification now. Woo. They could marry persons of the opposite sex regardless of national origin, and they did. In fact, marriages between men of African descent and women primarily of British descent were not uncommon at all. In one county, 1/2 of the free men of African descent were married to a European woman. There was a challenge to these marriages, but it did not come from the masses. It came from elites, and that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, this little depiction is meant to be a depiction of the lawmakers in Maryland, colonial Maryland lawmakers. The law in 1664 punishing, and I quote, British and other freeborn women who marry enslaved Negro men. The punishment for entering into these marriages was that the woman herself would be enslaved for her husband's life, and any children they have would be enslaved into their 20s. Now imagine that you are a plantation owner. That's not a bad deal. I get more property. I like that. And that is exactly what happened. Deter these marriages, which is the express intent of the law of 1664. Rather than deter them, these marriages were encouraged by property owners because that in fact, that such a marriage increased their property value. This law of 1664 represents, if not the first, certainly the precursor to anti-miscegenation law. These are laws that punished or prohibited marriage between, notice that white people didn't exist yet in 1664, at least as referenced in that law. But most generally speaking, anti-miscegenation law prohibited marriages between a white person and a specific non-white person or persons. Let me be really clear. I read all the time in history books, in academic texts, and I read anti-miscegenation law described as prohibiting interracial marriage. That's not correct. For example, a member of a native tribe could marry a person of Chinese descent. Both are understood.
Well, it's called Admonitions to Goddess Ma'at.